Let's bring in MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin and Cody Wofsy, the deputy director of the ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project. He argued against the birthright citizenship order before a district court last year. Thank you both. Lisa, first, break down what's at stake in this case.
Well, Anna, what's at stake is the future of the president's February 2025 executive order, which would prohibit birthright citizenship to babies born after a particular date in February of 2025 if one or both of their parents are not documented immigrants with a permanent right to remain. It's a little bit different in the executive order, depending on whether we're talking about the father or the mother. But beyond that group of babies, again, babies born after February of 2025, what's really at stake here is the question of who counts as a citizen in America, and when does this administration have the right to interrogate when somebody belongs in this country? If you sort of move out concentrically in rings from the people most affected by tomorrow's decision to the people who would be affected if it's taken to its logical conclusion, there are millions of people in this country who could be affected by its reasoning.
And of course, there is precedent in this case, and it's hard always to really predict where the justices will land, especially before we even hear arguments. But there have been comments and other written remarks that we've seen from these justices in the past on this issue. So bring us that. Give us some, I guess, light that we can maybe see if they continue to pursue in the same fashion tomorrow.
Well, in a fashion, this case has already been before this court. But the last time it was here, the question was, could there be a universal or nationwide injunction against the application of the executive order? Although the Supreme Court did not decide the merits of the birthright citizenship executive order, during oral arguments, certain of the justices did make comments. Justice Sotomayor, for example, telling the Solicitor General of the United States that as far as she's concerned, the birthright citizenship order violates not one, not two, not three, but 4 United States Supreme Court precedents. If other justices on the court agree with her that this is open and shut, particularly under the court's 1898 Wong Kim Ark case, then this will be a loser of the day for the administration. And I think many are predicting this won't go the Trump administration's way. It's just a question of by how many votes and on what reasoning, Anna.
Lisa Rubin, thank you. And Cody, you have faced a judge in this case before, and he sided with you. Your colleague, Cecilia Wong, will be making the argument on behalf of the ACLU before the Supreme Court tomorrow. Can you give us a preview of what we can expect to hear?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. That's right. We've been fighting against this executive order since the very first day of the Trump administration, and actually had been planning for this fight for almost a year before that. So we've been honing our legal arguments for a long time. We're ready to go. And what you'll hear tomorrow is, my guess is tough questions on both sides. There's a lot of legal nuance that the justices may be sort of wading through. But ultimately, the question here is, are we going to reject this absolutely bedrock American value that if you're born in this country, you are a citizen, full stop? And that's baked into the Constitution. It's been the rule in this country going all the way back to the founding and even before that to England. And as has already been discussed, it's the rule that the Supreme Court adopted in Wong Kim Ark and has reiterated a number of times since then. So for all those reasons, we're extremely confident that we're going to prevail in this case.
President Trump has repeatedly made this claim that birthright citizenship is outdated and was really meant for the babies of slaves. What does the law say about that, and how will the ACLU argue against that tomorrow?
Sure. That's really more of a political talking point than it is a legal argument. It's wrong for 4 reasons. So the first is that's not what the text of the Constitution says. The Constitution says all persons born. It doesn't single out any particular race. And second, that's for good reason. Those who framed the 14th Amendment were reacting against an idea of citizenship that was based on exclusion and division. This was the shameful decision in the Dred Scott case, which had denied the citizenship of Black Americans, whether they were enslaved or free. And the framers of the 14th Amendment said, no, we are going to adopt the longstanding rule of universal birthright citizenship under which the children of immigrants are U.S. citizens. And indeed, during the discussions in Congress on the citizenship clause, everybody agreed that it would cover the children of immigrants, not just the children of African Americans, as important as that was to start to undo the sins of slavery. And finally, I'll just point out that's not even the government's position in this case. They agree that the children of immigrants, including those who are not African Americans, are citizens if they're born here. They just say there's this rule about what their parents' immigration status is or what their parents' intent was that limits it to only some immigrants. That's wrong for a number of reasons, but their legal position is not that the 14th Amendment is limited only to the descendants of slaves.
Right. And the law and the Constitution currently does have some exceptions that are pretty explicit in that, which has to do with diplomats, children of diplomats that are born here. And then, of course, any enemy combatants that may give birth while they're invading the country. But Cody, if the Supreme Court does rule in favor of President Trump's order, I mean, what kind of repercussions would we see?
Yeah, so I completely agree with Lisa. I think you got to think about it as harms radiating out from a decision in the government's favor. And on this case, the sort of most direct harms are going to be to the babies who are targeted by the executive order. We're talking about tens of thousands of children born every month. And for them, it means denial of their constitutional rights, but also exposure to arrest, detention, deportation, maybe as soon as they're brought out of the hospital after their mothers give birth. It means denial of passports, Social Security numbers in the ordinary course of things, all kinds of programs, including critical early life nutrition. As they get older, we're talking about denial of ability to work, higher education, ability to vote, ability to serve on a jury, to serve in the military in certain capacities, and just all the things that are part of being a full member of U.S. society. But it goes beyond that, because while the executive order is specifically targeting babies born on or after February 20th of last year, the constitutional arguments the government is making are not limited in that way. And they cast a shadow over the citizenship of millions and millions of Americans who have lived their entire lives as U.S. citizens, potentially going back generations. And I think it goes even beyond that, because even beyond folks whose parents may lack, permanent immigration status when they're born, what this really would signal is open season on questioning the citizenship of our fellow Americans. It would be a signal that equal citizenship is no longer the rule in this country, that we're adopting this idea of two castes of people, those who are real citizens and those who are not real Americans. That's already a pernicious aspect of the discourse in America today. But I think we'd see that supercharged even more questioning of the citizenship of other Americans. And we know who would be the targets of that. It would be communities of color. It would be vulnerable populations. That is just not a path that we want to start down.
This is such a crucial case. Cody Wofsy of the ACLU, thank you so much for shining light, helping us understand what's at stake.